Hi again then guys, and welcome to, of course, another car breakdown from the 5 vehicles in the 1.38 patch. And just before I get into the review for this car, there's a little bit of important housekeeping that I need to get into regarding videos on the channel, because usually, of course, when a new pack comes out, I'll do tunes and reviews for each car each day. But yesterday, for those who didn't see my community post, I've been having some upload issues with YouTube where the videos for some reason are uploading, but then they're not processing properly into the full 1080p HD. They're only going to 720p, and then when the video is actually released, they look awful. And I'm not sure exactly why it's doing that. Nothing that I do in my process has changed, so it's either an issue with YouTube or it's an issue with the PlayStation Network. I'm not sure which one it is. Thankfully though, I picked up the raw footage for this review and the last one for the Honda Fit before these issues started. So if nothing else, I will still be able to do these 2 videos. I've just been having some issues uploading more since then. So hopefully this doesn't persist too much. And there are certain videos which it doesn't affect. The livery competition, the photo mode competition, unsung heroes, it doesn't affect those. And if I use older footage, for instance, for a Beards and Cars episode, it doesn't affect that. It's just more so these day of videos. So thanks for your patience with that. Of course, I would like it to be resolved as well. But for now, we've just got these reviews. Now, to get into the car itself, in my opinion at least, the Audi TT Quattro falls into an interesting position as far as cars coming back to the game go. And that is, it's not in the same kind of category, at least for most of us, as something like a Toyota A86 or a Porsche 962, wherein there are lots of people looking forward to it and clamouring for it, but at the same time it doesn't fall into the category of something like the Honda Fit, or in months past something like the older Mini Cooper, not the old one but the early 2000s one, wherein nobody cares. Nobody was asking for those cars and nobody really cares if they're in the game or not. The Honda Fit is a perfect example. This one's kind of in between, because it's not the kind of car that people are clamouring for, but at the same time, the Audi TT is such a charming car and such an unoffensive one in an all-round sense. It just does what it says on the tin, that you can't really be angry or disappointed that the car was added. Even if you don't like it, it's just kind of a, oh, okay, it's an Audi, it's a TT Quattro, who really cares? It's not like you can hate the car, and I'm sure there are some people who say, oh, I do hate it, but, you know, generally speaking, the vast majority of people feel either indifferent or positive. There are very few haters of the Audi TT. And for good reason. It's a great little car. Now, this car actually has a very good but initially unconventional rival back when it came out, and that is the Mark IV Golf R32. They share a lot in common. Both German, both the VAG Volkswagen Group. They both have 3.2 litre, 240 horsepower engines, very torquey, very thumpy, all-wheel drive, and they're both reasonably practical. Of course, the Golf more so being a hatchback compared to this as a still hatchback, funnily enough, but a more performance-oriented, you could say, 2+2 seater sports coupe. Now, what goes with that, especially for its time, is a lot. What goes with it today, not so much. Because, of course, what categorized as a sports car in the early 2000s is not the same as now. These kind of numbers aren't even hot hatch territory anymore. So it's kind of ironic to look back at a relatively short time ago, within the last 20 years, and to still see a car like this, which was so cool at the time. It's just kind of, okay, now. Now, speaking to that fact, the pricing, in accordance with how good its performance actually is quite high. Let's be honest, 57 or almost 58,000 credits is too much. Way too much for this car, premium or otherwise, whatever. There's no reason for this car to cost that much. And it's not like they're trying to price it up because it's so OP, because it isn't. I mean, you haven't seen it yet, but in the tune setup that I did for this car, it was quick for sure, but it's still slower than my N200 tune for the Subaru 22B. So, of course, when you're comparing it to something as legendary as that, it's not surprising that it's slower, but it just goes to show that to have this kind of almost Porsche-level price tag, it isn't entirely earned, and I'm not sure why they did that, because in real life, especially these earlier TT Quattros of either the 1.8 or the 3.2, they don't cost that much. You can even buy the ultra-rare black-roofed sport version with 2 seats, 1.8 litre turbo engine, but with the power of the 3.2. You can actually start Test Drive Unlimited with that car. They're like £8,000 or less to buy a used one. So why on earth is this one, which isn't even that top of the line model, almost 60 grand? Now of course 60 grand is not difficult to earn in Gran Turismo, but I'm talking about the principle of it. The car should not be that expensive. This should be a much more attainable, almost beginner level machine, because 240 horsepower is decent, but it's not as earth-shaking anymore as you could have thought it was back then. Now that's not to say it's bad. One of the best things, if not the best thing, about the TT Quattro, and I would actually argue this even more so about this earlier generation than any of the new ones, is it's one of the most beginner-friendly, most forgiving performance cars out there. Certainly in racing games, because as I said when I likened it to the Golf, it has such a pleasant, charming overall package. It has all of the advantages, or almost all of the advantages, in terms of performance for sure, some of the practicality advantages of something like a Focus ST or a Golf R32, but it has it in a package which is wider, lower to the ground, has that lower centre of gravity. It's a more pure sports coupe, the aerodynamics are even that little bit better, and it gives you more to work with in terms of a racing sense. Just look at stuff like the DTM version, the touring car, and various others. It's a good base car for tuning, for using as a track vehicle. It just gives you so much to work with, and I think that the TT Quattro, especially again this earlier one, is a very underrated car these days, because people tend to take vehicles like this from the early 2000s for granted. But I would say that this is similar in many ways to something like, and I mentioned this in my overarching review, not just the Golf, but even something like an early 2000s Subaru WRX, or some Mitsubishi Evos like the FQ320 Evo 8 or something like that, where I'm not saying it's as fast as them, but it has that similar package of having everything. It's practical, it's relatively understated, it's a lot of fun, it's got huge amounts of all-wheel drive grip, very forgiving, and very responsive to tuning. Across the board, it shares that in common with them. And I think that is enough for me to respect the car. Now, the TT Quattro, back when I was like 7 or 8 years old, actually used to be my favourite car, very briefly in Gran Turismo 2, and although it definitely doesn't hold that position for me anymore, not even close, it wouldn't be in my top 200 vehicles, let alone my top 10, but I do have a lot of respect for what it achieved in the early 2000s, and also what it's still good for now. It's not the kind of car that's ever going to blow your mind, but is it trying to? Not really. And having been in one at speed in real life, I can say it is a nice car, it is an exciting car, and that's basically all you want from something like this. It's a fun, fast, kind of thumpy little sports car. It's not trying to be a supercar, it's not trying to break lap records everywhere, so considering that it didn't even have its sights even set on those things, anything beyond that is a bonus. And I think the car actually does deserve more attention. It wouldn't be a car that I would be clamouring for myself to have back in the game, but I'm kind of in the middle ground as well. I don't hate seeing it back, and I don't love seeing it back. It's just another potential weapon to have in your arsenal, and what more do you need than that sometimes? So of course, check out the car if you want to try something a bit different. For instance, for N200, great little rally car, very forgiving all-rounder, and one of the most iconic sports car shapes, you can safely say, of all time now. So that's it overall for my particular review. Of course, stick around, I will get to the tuning when I can, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.